Can you feel your brain slipping? Or maybe you're here for someone you love who may or may not notice they're actually declining. Well, either way, today's video is going to cover the biggest changes you must make to your food in order to actually heal your brain. What's going on? My name is Tyler. I run Bradley Health, a cognitive health coaching company. We specialize in protecting you from Alzheimer's and dementia, cognitive decline, and actually helping people reverse their cognitive decline and even Alzheimer's disease through what's called the RECODE protocol, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the video. If you want to learn more about RECODE, I have a couple other videos talking about it. Just message me and I'll get those to you. Ideally, you'll walk away from today's video with direction and confidence in the direction you're actually taking. I understand how daunting it can be when you're feeling the slips in your brain, whenever you actually have a diagnosis and there's no path forward, because there really is no help in the traditional medical setting other than going in every few months. And I know this because when my mom was diagnosed with early onset dementia at 57, we didn't have any direction. And this is why I started being the coach that I am today, and I started Bradley Health. So I hope that I can help you reach your optimal brain outcome. And we're starting with nutrition today. Now, there is a caveat at the end of the video, and I think it's more important to talk about at the end, so I'm going to leave it for then. So just make sure you watch all the way to the end to actually get that caveat on what I'm talking about today, which is nutrition, specifically nutrition for your brain. Now, nutrition is so important, and I know you probably know how important it actually is for your body. But when we talk about brain, I feel like it gets left out a lot of the time. And one of the reasons why we focus on nutrition so much is because it's a huge part of why your brain feels like it's actually falling apart. And people don't necessarily think about that because your brain uses around 20% of your body's daily energy, which is pretty crazy that it uses that much energy daily, but it is the one big thing in your body that's constantly running. It's sending signals to every other piece going on. So of course, it uses a lot of energy. And where do you get energy? From food. From the food you're actually putting in your body. Food itself and energy, however, aren't the only things that play a role in your brain's ability to function day to day. Your gut is another big pivotal player in brain function. In fact, it acts kind of like a second brain. And many studies kind of look at the gut in this way because it actually sends more signals to your brain than your brain sends it back, which is pretty insane. And we could see actually from UCLA Center of Neurobiology and the study that they did back in 2015, there's trillions of microbes living there that produce neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, GABA. These microbiomes regulate inflammation and even shape how your neurons fire in your brain, all from your gut. And that's why you might hear the term the gut brain axis or the gut brain barrier, because they are so strongly connected. And in turn, your gut is largely controlled by what you put into it or don't put into it, because there are some things that people miss that actually need to go into your gut to help the biome, the microbiome, really thrive. But what is the optimal brain healthy diet? Well, it can be broken down pretty easily. But first, understanding what a diet actually is. Because whenever you hear diet, you might think of something that you go on for 2 to 3 weeks. It's typically in a weight loss sense and then come off of. But you need to be thinking about your diet, especially in this sense, as your lifestyle. This is how you're eating day in and day out, because your diet is what controls your optimal outcomes long term. So, for optimal brain health, the diet that we're looking at needs to be part of a few different things. A diet high in healthy high omega-3 and polyphenol fats, which is going to be like olive oil, fatty fish like salmon and mackerel, avocados, things like that. And then we can get down to fibrous foods. We want a lot of good fiber in your diet. And I'm not talking about the keto start or keto wraps that you can get at the stores that are just pumped with insoluble fiber. Those are fine, but they're not really what we're looking for. We're looking for, vegetables, cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and kale. We're looking at really starchy carbs like potatoes and sweet potatoes, fruits, legumes like beans, lentils, chickpeas, things like that are really high in natural fibers. And then the last thing we want to look at is antioxidants, which are so important to breaking down inflammation and really healing the free radical response in your body. The brighter the color of the food, the better. Obviously, we don't want to be eating Cheetos. Those aren't antioxidants. Those are just processed foods that are filled with outside colors. But think berries, beets, leafy greens, anything that has a lot of bright colors and is natural foods, that is what you want to shoot for. Now, when these are all coupled together, you get a well-rounded diet full of anti-inflammatory nutrients. And that is the key because you can look at cognitive decline many times as inflammation of the brain. But then it comes down to what is driving that inflammation. And the nutrients that you're getting and the diet that you're consuming can really, really control that inflammatory response going on in your body and in your brain. Now we can take this diet a step further when when someone's actively experiencing cognitive decline and you actually need reversal of symptoms. If you have an MCI, which is mild cognitive impairment diagnosis, or an actual Alzheimer's and dementia diagnosis, we're talking about healing the brain. We're not talking about necessarily protecting it because we need to heal it and then put in the protective measures after. This turns into a new lifestyle. Again, see how I said lifestyle instead of diet, of eating that's we call the keto flex diet. And this is coined by Dr. Del Bredesen inside the Recode protocol that he created. And the diet and the lifestyle that you're living here is exactly the same as what I mentioned above, except we want to limit carbs down to pretty much only fruits and vegetables, maybe some legumes, keeping them very low, maybe some high fiber starchy carbs as well, like potatoes, and increasing fats even more with the goal of getting into mild ketosis. We want to do this because when the brain is failing, it's not utilizing energy efficiently. It's not utilizing glucose, which is the typical energy source your body uses, how it is supposed to. Mainly because in a lot of cognitive decline cases and many of the Alzheimer's cases, you can look at the brain and see that the cells in the brain are actually experiencing insulin resistance 99% of the time in 9 out of 10 patients. And so if that's the case, you need another source of energy to bring out this your brain's ability to actually function day to day so that you can have the right amount of hormones produced and everything to keep your body going and then in turn making your brain function well. So we really want to utilize ketones in order to fix the energy imbalance in the brain. And so if you're not able to use glucose, if your brain is kind of faulty, then insert ketones. But what are ketones? Ketones are essentially what the body produces when it breaks down fat for energy instead of carbohydrates. And so if you're eating a high-fat diet and you have some fat to burn off on your body and you're out of glucose and out of carbs, then that's when your body's going to start learning and teaching itself how to produce those ketones effectively. You can also use exogenous ketones, which are ketones that aren't produced in your body. That would be endogenous ketones to supplement with, to start, to get your body to utilize them. And once it starts picking up like, oh, this is what we're utilizing for energy, it's able to start producing them more effectively. When you do this, your brain is going to have better energy stores. It's going to be able to utilize the ketones, and you're going to notice changes in your cognition just from that because brain energetics are so important. Now, in this keto flex lifestyle, it is a little more rigid on what you're allowed to put into your gut. Gluten has to come out 100%, and in my opinion, most people should cut out gluten in their diet regardless of how your body reacts to it. Typically, you can look at almost anybody and see a gluten intolerance whenever you're eating a lot of gluten and it's going down in your gut there. And then we also want to look at dairy. Dairy is less so, but in this diet, it is good to cut it out just because a lot of times dairy is inflammatory for people. But sometimes it does depend on your genetics and how your actual body reacts to those things. And we can also look at that, and depend on how far your decline is, look at stopping all alcohol and then pinpointing foods that disagree with your specific genetics and your specific gut microbiome. Because we might add in certain foods like broccoli that some people with certain genetics, it actually doesn't sit very well with because it makes you really gassy. And so we want to change what you're getting that nutrient from outside of broccoli. And this is what my job is a lot of times as a coach, is seeing like, oh, okay, you said you had a hard day Thursday and Friday. Let's go look and see what you ate. Oh, maybe it could be this. Let's cut that out. And they start seeing, better responses to the new food over what they were previously eating. And that is really, really important to understand as you're going through the actual protocol. The last part of the nutrition piece here comes down to fasting. And there's a lot of opinions on fasting. But when I'm talking about fasting here, it is specifically to get into one area of your body and a phenomenon called autophagy, which you may or may not have heard before if you've looked at a lot of brain health stuff. Now, autophagy is defined by the Cleveland Clinic well, so I'm just going to read straight from their definition. Autophagy is the breakdown and reuse of old cell parts so your cells can operate more efficiently. It's a natural cleaning out process that begins when your cells are stressed or deprived of nutrients. Hence, the fasting to deprive them of actual nutrients. This portion of getting into autophagy is important for two different things. metabolic health and using nutrients effectively again, and cellular energy systems. In a journal abstract from Rajat Singh and Ana Maria Cuervo, published in Cell Metabolism, they state autophagy mediates the degradation of cellular components in lysosomes, assuring removal of altered or dysfunctional proteins and organelles. Now, what this essentially means is that your cells have the ability to take dysfunctional parts, break them down, and then recreate the parts again so that they can work how they're supposed to. Because if we just go through life and our cells aren't kind of restructuring and building back and healing, which a lot of times that can't happen whenever you're just constantly consuming nutrients they need to absorb, then that's where you run into issues. So fasting consistently and creating autophagy is a way to get your cells to pick up the right amount of nutrients and rebuild this energetics that they're supposed to have with the mitochondria. And of course, if they're able to do that in the body and in the brain, obviously you're going to be functioning a lot better because you're going to have your cells functioning at all cylinders, being able to absorb nutrients and then produce energy across the board. And when that happens, then you can start reshaping your brain. You can start building synapses, building neurons, and the cells in your brain are much more susceptible to glucose, one, again, and the ketones. And so you're going to have a lot more brain energy. And the fasting itself needs to be at least 3 hours before bed because technically the diet's called KetoFlex 12-3, so 3 hours before bed at the end there, and then for a minimum of 12 hours overnight. Though people that are more prone to being inflamed could go all the way up to 16 hours daily. And if you look at the genetic component, if you have the ApoE4 genotype, then it's typically recommended to fast for up to that 16-hour mark pretty much every single day because your body's just more prone to inflammatory responses and having issues. Now, the caveat that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, here it is right here. Everyone's body is different. Genetics, lifestyle, level of decline you're experiencing or your loved one is experiencing, all the way to the type of potential decline you're experiencing, whether it's vascular, inflammatory, toxic, a mix of all three. Every body is different. So what works for somebody else may not work for you and vice versa. The diet is generally the best approach shown to healing the brain. Again, I say healing. Like we are here to protect and make sure that Alzheimer's and dementia is not taking over your brain and your body. And you can actually go through the process and protocol to make sure that if you have that cognitive decline, you can take control back in your own hands. And this is the cool part of Recode, and this is why I got certified. In a study done by Dr. Bredesen in 2018, they utilized the KetoFlex diet on their participants in this protocol, along with the whole slew of other protocol updates with supplements and movement and lifestyle and sleep and stress, all that combined together, but they were all on KetoFlex. 72% had a measurable improvement in cognitive testing, an objective improvement on paper, with an average improvement of 4.9 points in the MoCA score, which is a really, really good improvement in that. And then while 84% total saw subjective improvements overall. So 72% had measurable improvements in cognitive testing, so that's objective, and then 84% total saw improvements. And I'm not talking about just slowing of decline, I'm talking about improvements of symptoms, stopping of decline, and even reversal in some earlier cases. And this is why I got certified as a Recode coach, because nothing else can do that. The medicines out there that only approach amyloid beta, the clinical trials that are looking at p-tau, those drugs that come out, if you saw them like on paper and they were Alzheimer's drugs, you go, well, these don't work, because they truly don't. They slow progression by maybe 20-30% in maybe 40-50% of the patients that take them. But the Recode protocol is reversing symptoms, reversing a diagnosis in many, many patients across the world. And I hope you took away the great nutritional value for your brain that you can take by just changing your lifestyle. And it doesn't even have to be perfect in this KetoFlex approach. It just needs to start increasing those things that I mentioned: the fiber, the healthy fats, the antioxidants, decreasing the amount of sugar, processed food, gluten that you're consuming, and you're going to notice a difference pretty quickly as you change your diet. However, there's so much more to it than just diet alone, but I'm going to cover that in another video because I could talk all day all about it. Now, if you want my free guide that's going to help you go over the few steps that I think are really, really important for protecting your brain, 15 Steps to Heal Your Brain, it's free. Just click the link in the description and you can grab that free guide. Or if you want to talk about the protocol I run for my clients, just send me an email, and it's popping up on the screen right now. And you can take that email and just ask me any questions that you have. And if you're on your journey to heal your brain, I hope to see you in the next video.